Welcome back to B&B Movie Reviews. Star Wars content has been rolling out fast and furiously, but is it all as good as we hoped? The Mandalorian Season 3 has just wrapped, and Brad and I are here to break it all down. So stay right there. B&B is up next.
Go home. There's nothing left.
I am going to Mandalore, so that I may bathe in the living waters and be forgiven for my transgressions.
You are a fool. There's nothing magic about the mines of Mandalore. They supplied Beskar ore to our ancestors, and the rest is superstition. That planet has been ravaged, plundered, and poisoned.
You said that the curse was a lie. Make up your mind.
If you want to go to the mines, be my guest.
Bo-Katan and Din Djarin debate the state of Mandalore as Din Djarin prepares to travel to the planet to bathe in the living waters to be redeemed for taking his helmet off in the previous season. So, Brad, this is the end of a season of episode 1 of The Mandalorian. So, you know, the start of this season, you know, with this episode, you know, he goes back to Navarro.
Does it, though, start in this season? Is the start of the season in episode 1 of season 3, or is it in episodes 6 and 7?
Yeah, 4 and 5, somewhere in there.
Of Book of Boba Fett.
Let's get into it, man.
Like the reunion of Din and Grogu happening in the Book of Boba Fett and not in the Mandalorian. You know, we talked about it at the time when Book of Boba Fett came out. We're going to talk about it again. It just felt like this season was robbed of such a critical moment. And if you had taken those 2 episodes from the Book of Boba Fett and you made those the start of Mandalorian season 3, I think we would feel a lot differently about the season as a whole.
Yeah, because I think one of the criticisms about this season is the lack of Din Djarin and Grogu and that relationship and them kind of being put into the background a little bit. But I think you're right. I think if we get those episodes where they reunite and we get to see the beginning of like where everything left off from season 2, because
and if you had allowed Boba Fett to be the sole victor of his own show, it would have done a better service to that character and his narrative.
Yeah, because the Book of Boba Fett, and I know they talk about this a lot, where they feel like Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, and the upcoming Ahsoka is all like one big story. But when you have an audience that are watching these shows, maybe everybody's not watching Book of Boba Fett. So when they come into this, there's something missing, you know, and it's just, it feels a little bit uneven.
Well, I just miss the dynamic that was established in the first 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, where it really was the idea of Din and Grogu growing as a family. Like Din discovering that he does need to be Grogu's dad because Grogu has nobody. And that should be the driving force of the plot. And this season, it was so concerned with all these other things that are going on beyond the borders of the franchise that we lost the thread.
Yeah, I do feel like we lost the thread. I mean, I love the way that it expands so that we get more of what is happening with the Mandalorians overall than them trying to retake Mandalore. But you're right, we do lose the focus that we had in the first 2 seasons with, you know, him trying to get Grogu to a Jedi for safe haven, and through those journeys they have that bond that they're connecting. But now that that bond has been connected, and now it just feels like we're just kind of going through the motions with this season, and it's unfortunate.
I feel like the theme of The Mandalorian season 3 is subversion. You know, the first 2 seasons build up all this tension and these ideas of, like, you know, the dark saber, or the conflict between the Children of the Watch and Bo-Katan Kryze's Mandalorian sect. This idea that Mandalore is poisoned and uninhabitable, and Mando is going to return to it, and it's going to be this large journey. But then season 3 starts off, and like right from the jump, it's really easy to get to Mandalore. It's really easy to get to those living waters. It's really easy to pass the baton of the Darksaber. They just kept subverting things, and I think in subverting it, they do a disservice.
They do a disservice, and I'm glad you mentioned that, because there's no conflict in this season, and conflict creates drama, and you only have 8 episodes, and we can get more into that, especially when we start talking about Bo-Katan and things like that. But you're right, everything happens so easily in this season where you're not creating drama for the audience to really get invested into.
Yeah, I mean, it almost feels like the show is just like going on a video game map of like A to B to C to D, and we did that in those episodes, but there's no challenge in getting to those spots.
No.
Unlike a video game. I just feel like there were opportunities here to really engage with what's happening under those helmets. That's another big problem with this show, is like, what is Din thinking?
Yeah.
You know, what is Grogu thinking? What is Bo-Katan thinking? Only until the very end of this season do we really get any insight into Bo-Katan's motivation. Otherwise, it's a giant mystery. Just like, what is the expression on Din's face? What is he thinking? It's all hidden from us.
And that's unfortunate, because there's a lot of acting that they can do underneath the mask, and we've seen it in previous seasons where we can get those moments, you know, with the Mandalorians, with Bo-Katan and with Din Djarin, to really kind of get inside their head, to see how the journey that they're on is affecting them internally and as a character, and to see their arc and more of their growth. But it's unfortunate.
But I also think we've like reached the limit of what can be communicated with the Mandalorian under the helmet. We know Pedro Pascal is probably not even on set one day in season 3. He's just providing a voice, most likely. And I feel that distance.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, because I feel that too. And you can see the disconnect between the characters in that. But yeah, so we'll get more into the Mandalorian and some of the themes that are going on in this season when we come back right after this message.
When times get dark, we can't see the help that's all around us. Let 211 be your guiding light for help with food, healthcare, and other resources.
211, how can I help you?
Call 211 or visit 211.org. 211, get connected, get help.
You'll see some pleasant colors, hear a light buzzing, and experience a great sense of relief in no time at all.
You're gonna wipe my mind.
Absolutely not. This isn't the Empire, son. This device is used to heal. I've been through the treatment myself, in fact, and I found the experience quite refreshing.
Please, just let me explain. I was just trying to help.
This will only take a moment. I'll be here when you wake up.
You don't understand. She brought me there. It was a trap. Please, I just wanted to help. She set me up. Please. You set me up.
A rehabilitated Dr. Pershing gets coerced and deceived by Ilya Kane to continue his cloning research when she sets a trap to get him caught by the New Republic. Brian.
It's a trap.
It's a trap. you gotta say it's a trap when there's a Mon Calamari present.
Yeah.
Brian, that's like the longest episode in the season, where we're spending a lot of time. We're spending an entire episode's worth with Dr. Pershing on Coruscant. It's a big departure from the Mandalore plot. What did you think about this escapade?
You know, after the season ended, it's a bit confusing to me, to be honest with you. I like the director of this episode, Lee Isaac Chung, who directed Minari. And
I think the episode is great.
The episode
isolated.
is great. As an isolated episode, it's great. And I like that we go back to Dr. Pershing and to see his rehabilitation and to see his arc. And watching,
hear what's going on with these former Imperials. Like, how do you incorporate your enemy into your new political system?
Yeah, but as the episode started to go along, along, you kind of started to kind of know that, okay, one of these people aren't, and we know it's, as we know now, it's Elia Kane, who was the spy. But it's just weird that we get these kind of like separate story arcs where it's not including the Mandalorian, almost like it's kind of doing the same thing Book of Boba Fett did.
Yeah, I feel like if the season as a whole was longer, if the Mandalorian was 16 episodes, maybe even 12 episodes instead of just 8 episodes, we could have more of these like mythology building stories.
Yeah.
And I think that this story does do a lot to help us understand where the New Republic is and how it allows something like the First Order to return. And it shows how the failings of the original Republic or the Old Republic or whatever, there's the High Republic, the Old Republic, the New Republic, it's so hard to keep track.
Yeah, but that's interesting though.
The cyclical nature of it.
Exactly, because I think, and maybe that was the point of this episode, is to kind of start to show how they are starting to rebuild under the New Republic, as the same way the Sith started to kind of rise up during the High Republic, which we'll get to see in the Acolyte later on.
And getting to go to the Opera House where Darth Sidious or Chancellor Palpatine had his conversation with Anakin Walker about Darth Plagueis the Wise, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I like going back to that moment, which was a very dark moment in the prequel trilogy, and show that these little bits of darkness are continuing to persist in other avenues.
Now, with the spy, with Elia Kane's character, like that's revealed at the end of this episode, and I guess we can get into a little bit of the arc as far as like her continuing to work with Moff Gideon. We know that Moff Gideon does return towards the end of this season, but with that whole arc with the Imperials and with Moff Gideon and everything and what he's starting to do, how do you think all of that stuff worked in relation to her character and what she's doing?
I feel like the Moff Gideon storyline is treated too much like a mystery box. And if they had made it a little more clear about where he was and what he was up to earlier on, or again, if we had a longer season so that we could explore what Moff Gideon was up to and why Moff Gideon was up to things. Like, you know, he's another character, motivation-wise, we don't really have much access to, and that's very, very frustrating.
It is. It's very frustrating because I believe, like, instead of introducing him in the penultimate episode or revealing him in the penultimate episode, you could have introduced him way earlier in this season to kind of build up, because ultimately, where the show ends with his character, we don't know if he's alive or dead, but if he is off and is dead, it almost feels pointless to even have him in the show. But it kind of goes to that whole idea of, like, you know, it's taking us away from our main storyline. With a season that you only have 8 episodes, you really could have devoted more time to fleshing out Din Djarin and Grogu.
And like before this episode, Din just keeps like stumbling and fumbling through the plot. Like his strength feels diminished. You know, on Mandalore, and you know, it elevates Bo-Katan, but it really sends him to a place that's just not interesting to watch. Like, this is the same guy from seasons 1 and 2, or even from those 2 episodes from the Book of Boba Fett. And I think that would be less of an issue if you just took those 2 episodes from the Book of Boba Fett, put them into the front, and it would be a little more balanced with what we get.
I don't know. Maybe Grogu has kind of softened him a little bit. I don't know.
I mean, children soften everybody, I imagine. I say this as a child-free individual, which is why I'm so hardcore.
There you go. There you go. So those are our thoughts on some of the Moff Gideon story arc and everything. But when we come back, we will talk a little bit more about Bo-Katan. So stay right there.
Jason, let's go see your room.
That's not right. How is it? Is it good?
Remove your helmet. But... do you respect my station?
I do.
Remove your helmet. Our people have strayed from the way, and it is not enough for a few to walk it. We must walk it together.
This is the way.
Bo-Katan Kryze reluctantly removes her helmet at the request of the armorer, who believes that she is the one to unite and lead the Mandalorians to reclaim their planet. So let's get into Bo-Katan Kryze. Yeah, we see this scene with the armorer, and there's some things that happen when she has to rescue Din from the waters, and when she goes down to rescue him, she sees the mythosaur.
Yeah, she has her faith rekindled, is how I interpret it, but I have to interpret it because they never tell us.
Well, exactly, because the same thing, because, I mean, you saw it that way. I saw it as like, okay, maybe she saw that and she's leveraging some of her power to get in with this clan.
A lot of maybes going on.
There's a lot of maybes because nothing is said and we don't get it through the performances or anything like that.
And why is like the armorer totally cool with incorporating Bo-Katan into her social circle?
It's interesting because when I think it was earlier when she is reforging her armor and she says that she wants to have not the night owl, but she wants to have like the insignia of the mythosaur, and she asks, well, if I saw one, and then I guess the armorer. At that moment, I didn't know if the armorer believed her or not. And then we see this scene, and she's like, yeah, you know, you saw the mythosaur, so you're the one to lead us because you walk both paths.
Well, knowing what we know from the animated series about Death Watch, and these are the children of the Watch, they're not a group to be trusted. And so, like, the first several seasons of The Mandalorian, I always have one eye on the armorer, ready for her to strike, to betray the group, to reveal her zealotness, right?
Okay.
And the fact that it all never amounts to anything, and that actually we should just be totally cool with the Children of the Watch and their very righteous ways was a little odd to me. But again, it speaks to subversion being the theme. You expect one thing, and Jon Favreau and the team are going to be like, no, we're not going to fall into that trap.
Yeah,
and that's maybe interesting if there was some conflict somewhere else at any point in this season. What does work about The Mandalorian Season 3 for me, though, is Katie Sackhoff as Bo-Katan Kryze.
She's awesome.
She's the star of the season, and she's incredibly good throughout. And I was curious to see how she was going to react to all these situations that Din, the Mandalorian, that, you know, Jack Black and Lizzo put her through.
Yeah, and it's crazy too because I like how they Katie Sackhoff incorporates all of the history of Bo-Katan because she voiced Bo-Katan in the animated shows. So she's bringing in that history from Clone Wars, you know, from Rebels and everything that we've seen her in previously into what is going on with her now.
I would imagine that she has a great understanding of Bo-Katan's internal life. And I just wish that they allowed her to express it before the penultimate episode.
Yeah, and then even going to the episode where she tries to regain her fleet, which was the episode Bryce Dallas Howard directed.
The Jack Black Lizzo.
The Jack Black Lizzo that got a lot of people talking, a lot of criticisms. Christopher Lloyd, we got to mention Christopher Lloyd.
Yeah, Doc Brown.
Doc Brown. But yeah, it just feels like that whole episode that we went through. Again, a side mission just to get to what the episode was really about was her, you know, going up against Axe Woes to really reclaim and regain her fleet so that they can go and take back Mandalore.
I think that episode does a lot of the same things that the Pershing episode does in expanding the larger universe of Star Wars. What is happening outside of Din Djarin's story at this point in time of the, in Star Wars. And so you get to see what it is like in this galaxy post-Imperial rule.
Yeah.
And I was into all of that. Like, I find that fascinating. You know, I like the droid civilization that we see in this episode.
That's interesting.
Getting to go to the bar and seeing what these servants do on their off time.
On their off time.
But then also, like, At some point, this series has to address Din Djarin's bigotry towards droids.
I mean, do they address it though? I believe they do. We know how he feels about droids.
Right, and we kind of understand why, because when the battle droids killed his parents.
Killed his parents when he was a kid.
But I just feel like Star Wars has always had this complicated view of what is a droid. Like, how should we feel about R2-D2, C-3PO, R5?
R5.
You know?
I think droids need to have more rights.
And I like that complicated morality that they're exploring with droids, but I think at some point we need to like really dig down.
No, we do. The same way we do with the clones and how we've done that through the Bad Batch.
Exactly.
Let's do that with the droids.
Give us the Bad Batch version of droids.
I'm with it. Pitch it to Lucasfilm.
Dave Filoni.
All right, so those are some of our thoughts on Bo-Katan and her story arc. When we come back, we'll take a look at some of the things that happen in the finale and where Star Wars goes moving forward. So stay right there.
Every 2 minutes, a woman in the U.S. is diagnosed with breast cancer. And that's why when others look away, we lean in. We're fighting alongside patients because we know one moment can change everything. With your help, more moments of hope are possible. Join our fight. Save lives.
Paz Vizsla stays behind, sacrificing himself as the other Mandalorians escape after a surprise ambush on their home planet of Mandalore. These last 2 episodes in Season 3 are extremely satisfying from an action point of view.
Oh, there are. Rick Famuyiwa directed the last 2 episodes, and he directed the season premiere of Season 3. So, you know, to kind of have him kind of start this season and to finish it, and the way he's able to kind of really, is very thrilling. You know, as far as story, you know, we've been talking about that throughout this whole episode, as far as with Bo-Katan and Din Djarin and everything. I don't know if we get a lot of that, and then we could talk about the wrap-up, but as far as the action that we get, especially the Mandalorian action, some stuff that we haven't really seen in live action before, it was pretty exciting and pretty exciting to watch.
The opening of Episode 7, I think, is also very exciting when we finally do get Moff Gideon, Giancarlo Esposito back in the show. Oh my gosh, how exciting to have him back in Star Wars.
I love him, man. He's great.
So good.
Yeah.
And we get like the Shadow Council, and that conversation amongst those Imperial remnants, the leftovers, is very tantalizing. Xander Berkeley as Pelion, Grand Admiral Thrawn's right-hand man. Like, okay, we've got some really exciting stuff about to pop off.
Yeah.
And I was kind of hoping that it would start to really pop off in Season 3's finale, and it doesn't quite.
Yeah.
You know? They're saving, I think, some of that for Ahsoka. But as far as like exciting me, these last 2 episodes like re-engaged me into what Lucasfilm was trying to build with the Star Wars franchise.
And I like how they are trying to build that with the mention of Thrawn, but I wanted to see how Moff Gideon was going to be incorporated more in, because even with like that meeting with the Shadow Council, you kind of get a glimpse of where the story could go with Moff Gideon, and possibly having some conflict with Thrawn to really kind of like to show Thrawn.
That's pretty exciting, right?
As the big bad, but then it kind of pulls the rug from under you in the season finale when we see supposedly what happens to Moff Gideon.
Supposedly, you know, when you're messing with clones, as we know, as longtime Star Wars fans,
that's right.
That unless you see, you know, Moff Gideon's head, and even if you see Moff Gideon's head, you can't trust that he's dead. And because we learned that Moff Gideon is breeding an army of clone versions of himself with a high M count using what they got from Grogu in the first couple of seasons.
So that he could have the Force.
That's pretty interesting.
That is interesting. Yeah.
Now, it does appear that at the end of this season that they scrap all that, but I don't trust it. He can't only have one cache of Gideon clones on Mandalore.
No.
What about Navarro? What's going on back at Navarro?
That's interesting because, and you wouldn't show that he's cloning himself and then see that whole place get destroyed without that thread being continued in Ahsoka, in Skeleton Crew, and any of these other shows, because I think that is going to continue in possibly the movie as well.
Again, speaking to the theme of subversion, we spent 2 seasons of The Mandalorian going, what does Gideon want with Grogu? And then you get to this and you're like, oh, okay. Oh, okay. It's not like the most revelatory.
No, and we could have kind of predicted that as well.
Yeah.
Now, getting to Din and Grogu, you know, when all the action wraps up and we get to the resolution, we learn to see as far as like where we could go in a season 4, where we might be going with Ahsoka and all these other shows, that Din Djarin is going to be, I guess, contracting with the New Republic to take on certain missions now.
Yeah, and you know that could be pretty darn good. It also sounds a lot like what season 2 was. Now, season 2 had the driving force of, I got to get Grogu to a Jedi.
Yeah.
And
so
basically what you get at the end of season 3 is what we were kind of looking for in season 2, except now we have Grogu and Din accepting themselves as a family unit. Din actually becoming the father of Grogu, the adopted father of Grogu. I think that's pretty satisfying.
Yeah.
And I'm excited to see what a season 4 of The Mandalorian would look like while he's working for Carson and the New Republic.
Yeah, and I like that him and Grogu do kind of now have this partnership where it's not just about him being, you know, on this mission to try to just get him to rescue, but now they're in it together.
And this feels a little bit more like Lone Wolf and Cub, right? Grogu has some agency. Grogu has some abilities. Grogu can actually affect story now.
Yeah.
Maybe Grogu can speak soon.
Let's see. I hope so. That'll bring a new element into season 4. So he is getting a little older.
Yeah, so like, I don't know if the last 2 episodes of The Mandalorian recovered the entire season.
Yeah.
But it did return some excitement for the future of these characters for me.
Yeah, I'm always going to be looking forward to seeing what happens with these characters. I mean, I enjoy getting introduced to these new characters, and I always want to see where their journey goes. So with season 3, I know it's been a mixed bag, but where do you fall?
Well, it's a big time mixed bag, but I do think that there is more in the season to like than dislike. But the frustrations were agonizing. So I feel like I come off very negative on season 3. I don't have it in me to give it a B-. You know, we're the B&B show. We give something a B+ if we love it. Give something a B- if we didn't like it. It still leaves me excited for the possibility of what's coming in Ahsoka. And as long as Ahsoka has a better grasp on propelling the characters forward and less the plot, I'll be happy.
Okay.
So B+, I think.
See, this is the one time I wish we had just a straight B, or maybe I'll just reserve.
This is our show.
I'm gonna give it a straight B, but I'm gonna reserve. I'll come back to it after I watch Ahsoka.
Yeah. Okay.
So those are our thoughts on Mandalorian Season 3. A mixed bag, but if you're a Star Wars fan, I definitely think it's definitely worth a watch. All right, so those are our thoughts on Mandalorian. So thank you for watching, and be a part of the show. If you want, you can leave your suggestions and feel free to email us at bnbmoviereviews@gmail.com. And with that, we will see you at the movies.